Welcome to Love Always Self, a podcast about connection to self, reflections of self, and how this impacts our reality.
We're all about trying to find balance, discovering tools for spiritual wellness, and creating a safe place to have loving conversations about a broad range of topics.
I'm Karista, an energy healer with a background in Reiki, nursing, health coaching, and personal training. I have a holistic mindset and believe that everyone and everything can work together in harmony so that we can create more balanced life experiences.
And I'm Shira, a spiritual intuitive and explorer of personal truth with a background in management and finance. I feel we are all connected and guided by our own spiritual team, whom I refer to as Mount Glass, and I want to help teach you how to connect with yours.
We believe we're all connected, and by learning to love self, we will elevate the collective consciousness and learn to create deeper connections with each other, self, and source. As we grow and learn through our own life adventures and self-discoveries, we hope you gain insights into your own truth.
Don't forget to subscribe to stay notified of new content, and we hope you enjoy the show.
To this episode of Love Always Self. I'm Karista.
And I'm Shira.
And today we are going to be talking a little bit about how, even though we are trying to focus more on love and light and being in these positive states of awareness and thinking, that sometimes when we are presented with difficult situations, how sometimes we need to experience those lows before we move on to being back into that more positive state of mind.
Yes. And we also want to acknowledge our own personal growth in doing this, just because we also felt that when we started this podcast, that it was sharing our experiences that help others move or follow along to see if they can relate to that in any sort of way and help themselves in that same, instance. So,
yeah, being able to use our own experiences to apply them into your life to, hopefully have a more positive outlook and, more joyful experience while on this planet. So first, just want to say, hey, we're in the same room. So really excited for this episode because we actually get to interact like this. So really excited and really happy that you could join us. So
yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. This is actually the first time that her and I have attempted to record one of our episodes by also being in the same room. Or at least, okay, let me back that up. We've tried it once, but this is the first successful time that we have been able to record. I'm going to go ahead and just say that we're really fond of this new mic. So, yeah.
Yes, we've had lots of failures, but again, failures are a part of success. So
Exactly. And what's really funny is I had posted about on social media about getting this mic and the arm, and the responses that I got was actually pretty cool. Because I've never, this is my first time diving into like the tech side of things, right? And like all the different aspects of like, you get connected over here, and then you got, oh, by the way, if you get a boom arm, that's probably what it's called, and a microphone that's actually like worth something, then you can sound better and people care about that. And I was just like, okay, cool. I'm gonna try it out. Let me see what I can do. And I had to figure all this out and figure out how to get the app that goes with it. And I was like, okay, what's the best one that works for the both of us? Anyway, I could keep going down that rabbit hole. I do know some of our listeners are actually quite fascinated with this whole like podcast setup and how we went about that. So I'll leave some links down below as far as like where I got the microphone, where I got the boom arm, specifically for you guys. So thank you. I appreciate all the follows and likes regarding that.
So diving into our topic, this last week, it's been, I'd say overwhelming is probably not covering it completely.
Yeah.
But basically been feeling like I've been burning the candle from both ends.
Yeah.
And, just when we get into this, like, these harder situations, feeling in this lower state of thinking. So when I say lower, we're feeling that duality of this existence. So, more of the extremes of fear and, loneliness or anger or sadness. Again, that other side of the aspect is love and joy and delight. And when, you know, sometimes when we get into this space of overwhelmed, whatever that, you know, other subcategory of feeling, whatever it is, when we get overwhelmed, it can be hard for us to receive guidance from others and can actually almost cause us to push away a little bit and maybe hermit a little bit. I know that's something that I do. Uh, so I may lessen the amount that I talk to people because I don't want to receive advice at that moment. So I'd like to let you know that it's okay. If you need to feel whatever you're feeling, that is okay. Sometimes we actually have to really be in that experience of fear, of anger, of resentment, of fatigue, of crying, sadness, whatever it is. We need to experience that and actually dive deeper into it, because the only way past something is actually through it rather than going around it. Because if we go around something, that's really just brushing the issue under the rug.
Right.
So, something that I want to acknowledge that you do with me, Shira, is when I'm in these states, and I feel that I do this with you too, but from my perspective, you do a fantastic job of checking in with me to see where I'm at, if I am ready to receive, advice or support in the form of advice.
Yeah. And I do that because sometimes, and I know my own personal experiences with this, is that I'll go through a roller coaster of this ups and downs, which I think, and I've, just tapping into it, I feel like this is just kind of going on a lot right now, um, as everyone's trying to raise their awareness towards their own personal, emotional states or, whatever growth, uh, awareness, consciousness increasing, whatever. Um, I want to make sure that when I'm speaking to somebody about where they're at, are they going to be open to receiving that information? And then of course there's always that difference too, because I'm the same way. I want to know when I'm talking to somebody, can I talk to you to just vent to you? Can I stay in my own personal bubble of the shit at the moment? Or do I actually want someone to help me fix the emotional state that I'm in at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? Can I actually receive the guidance, hear it, but actually receive it internally?
Right. Absorb and be able to implement it.
Right. So I do that for others, and I do that for you when you and I are talking. Like, if you're in a difficult state emotionally, or having experiences that are like a bit more of a difficult emotional state, then I want to make sure, like, am I being there for you as a friend,
Mm-hmm.
to ask whether or not you want to hear this from me? Because what'll happen is that if I'm all about, like, oh, I'm gonna just jump in and I'm gonna fix this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to fix this for you because I care about you. Then what happens is that you may not be in that place of wanting to be fixed. You might just want to be heard. So you might get defensive. And then I might be in a state of, well, shit, why aren't you listening to me? Why aren't you taking my advice? Right? Because I'm just like fix it mode.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
and we get that a lot, especially like in our spousal relationships.
Love you.
Love you guys. And but there's a lot of that need to say, oh my God, the person that I care about
Mm-hmm.
is not doing well at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Let me fix it for you.
Right.
Here, you should feel this way. And if you feel this
Mm-hmm.
way and you take my advice, you're going to be better. Then we just move on to whatever else is going on.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels dismissive when you do that.
Right.
And it hurts the person that you're talking to, because that might not be what they're needing at that moment.
So like when we ask somebody, you know, are you open to me giving you advice on this? I'd like to point out like a couple different aspects of this because some people may feel obligated to say yes, but not really be in that state. And so when they say yes, but they're still like resisting, any advice that you give to them is just gonna like bounce off and yeah, exactly, right over their head, in one ear out the other, and be like, okay, just to placate you and get you off their back.
Good word. Placate. I wouldn't have thought to say that.
It just comes in. Um, so even taking responsibility for yourself and recognizing, are you in a place to receive that information and put it to use? And if you're not, and if you're just again placating that person, well, there's mismatched energy, and neither one is going to feel the benefit of giving or receiving support. And so if you're not in that space to receive, and I've said this to you, you've said this to me, no, I just need to talk about this. I need to be in this emotion at this moment.
Yeah. I think what we there was a time when, I was going through some medical stuff, and if you listen back at any of our previous episodes, I talk about my cancer and going through that. And there was times where I would call Carrie and just be like, "Hey," and I would even initiate that. And it's a good idea to do that, even with the person that you're reaching out to, is just to go ahead and initiate the conversation and start off by saying, "I'm about to vent. Are you cool? Are you in a place to hear me out on that?
Mm-hmm.
Are you in a place to receive that vent, right? That vent session." So that's kind of one of those things that I would do, is I would say, "Carrie, I'm not looking for an emotional fix. I just want to talk a lot of shit. I want to be in the shit right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to choose to be in that place."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing I think we should talk about, is that and when you get to a place where you're starting to become more aware of your own emotional states, you're going to get to a place eventually where you are now realizing that you are choosing to stay there, and it's okay to do that. It's okay to feel and be in that state and decide, "I'm going to drive down the street, not down the street. I'm going to go down the highway," because it's more often on a highway. "I'm going to go down a highway. I'm going to go into some traffic. There's going to be a bunch of idiots driving on the road. They're driving me crazy. They're cutting me off. Almost got sideswiped. I'm going to start, maybe not be calm about it, have a little road rage. I'm like, oh my God, I'm being like kind of crazy right now." And then that awareness kicks in. And you're like, "Hi, Shira," checking in with self, right? "You're a bit intense at the moment. I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to stay in this shit for a second, continue to have this road rage and be angry and upset. And quite frankly, that messes with your body, but hey, you know it. Or I'm going to change my emotional state and choose a different emotion that elevates me a little bit better, in the sense of not being in that state." But either way, it's okay, because sometimes you just need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think another point on this is, when we're in that emotional state, if you're wanting to support somebody that's in that emotional state, giving them the space to be where they are without the expectation, without any expectation, and listen. When we acknowledge what we are hearing, that is not giving the situation energy, that is supporting the person, and it's creating an even deeper, more intimate bond when you can sit there and say, "Oh, God, that sounds like it sucks."
right.
And you're not again building on that energy. You are acknowledging and validating what you hear and what that person is experiencing, and you're letting them know that it's a safe place for you to be able to talk to them.
And that validation is so important. I mean, we just as creatures, we tend to really want to feel like we're being heard.
Mm-hmm.
And part of being heard, or feeling that you're being heard, is to hear validation from the person that you're communicating with. So you and I, when we're having a conversation, I'll always be like, damn, that's not cool,
Mm-hmm.
but I won't throw uh there's moments where I'm really validating her to the point where, like, yeah, where I'm like,
it's adding energy to
oh,
it.
hell no, right? I'm gonna get in on this for you. So
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, but then there's also these moments where I am choosing to recognize and using my own awareness to recognize whatever state she's in. I want to help her to come out of that state. Hopefully this microphone's picking up this thunder because it's kind of cool. I don't know. It's a really good mic. It might not do that. But anyway.
Let the thunder roll.
Let the thunder roll. I was like, while we're talking about this, is it thundering? Yes, it is. Okay.
And the lightning strike.
Dude. We can't be helped. It's okay. Or can we?
Do we want to be?
Do we want to be? We're choosing. So I choose silly and thunder. Thanks. No, but like, I don't even remember what I was saying, but yeah, it's just like, I want to be able to be supportive, give somebody a confirmation that I'm hearing what they're saying, validate them in the sense that when they're experiencing an emotion, it's not that they shouldn't have that emotion, because that's when the shit will really hit the fan in a conversation, is when somebody says, no, you shouldn't feel like that. And you're like, wow, that's so, like,
gaslighting,
right? Like, who are you to tell me how I'm supposed to feel, right? Like, that's the first gut reaction you want to have to someone when they come at you and say something like that. And even if you don't say that out loud to somebody, you start to feel that discourse. Yeah. So
sometimes we need to be in the yuck. And feel it. And again, if you try to ignore it and brush it under the rug, that, resistance, it's just going to cause that emotion to persist. And it's going to keep bringing these experiences back into your reality for you to experience that yuck. And so that you can actually have the opportunity to work through it. So the more that you resist, feeling it and working through it and doing what's called shadow work. If you haven't heard of shadow work, there's another rabbit hole.
Good luck.
Yeah. but when we actually experience it and stop resisting feeling those feelings, that's when we can actually work through them and recognize our own power and choice in how we move forward with this data that we've gone through.
Right. And there's always the work that does and should be done internally to allow yourself to not be so stuck in those emotions for such a long period of time that you're causing yourself your own self detriment, right? Mm-hmm. So that's important to also keep in mind, is that we can be in that, she's being nice and she's calling it the yuck, I'm going to call it the shit, but like we can be in that crap state, right? Or that shit state, as long as we want, as long as we're aware that that's the choice we're making. It is okay, but I also would encourage to find ways to come out of it or pull yourself out of it, so you don't start to cause harm to your human,
because to your physical body,
right? To your physical body, because eventually it will start to cause that kind of harm,
right?
I catch myself doing it all the time, and it's even to the point now where, like, I actually feel nauseated when I stay in those emotional states for a long period of time.
I actually recognized that this week. Yeah. Like, I've been feeling very overwhelmed, and granted, I've been renovating a house for the last 3 months, and we just moved in, which moving in itself is an event. And like, I've been operating at zero, for this whole week. And so any changes outside of that like have just been too much for me to handle, and basically we need to like what experiencing not need to what experiencing these emotions gives us the opportunity to do is to recognize how amazing the other end of the spectrum really is. So if you don't ever experience sadness, you are only in the happy state, you can't really appreciate that happiness because you've never been anything but.
Right. So, like, how do you know what makes you truly happy if you've never experienced the opposite spectrum of that? Right.
So, yeah, how do we get out of this, or I don't necessarily want to say get out of it, but how do we allow ourselves to elevate back up and move towards that positive state of mind, um, from that negative situation or that state of mind?
Well, it's not easy, first of all. I don't find any of the self discovery on how to pull yourself out of, a depression or sadness or sorrow or any of these, like, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm going to call them the low vibe feelings or emotions, right? Um, and it's not easy to pull yourself out of that without the discovery of self, or right, without that self discovery on where am I, or self check in. That's really required in order to understand where you're at. Mm-hmm. So I would say the first thing to look at is asking yourself that question: how am I doing today? Mm-hmm. Right. Or if you have an emotional response to something, giving yourself a little bit of space. And we talk about space quite a bit, but it's important. And sometimes that space internally can be like 2 seconds, and sometimes it could be like 2 weeks, and sometimes it can be like 6 months. I really hope you're not doing that, but it can be drawn out as long as you personally want it to be. But again, it's your choice. Mm-hmm. You're not forced to stay in whatever emotional state you're being in. Mm-hmm. It is something that you are personally choosing to do. So, and we can, this is something I think we should talk about, because there are the chemical balance situations too that could, affect that emotional state mentally. Yeah. So I'm not going to dismiss that whatsoever.
One thing I would like to note that is really helpful in getting, through these emotional timeframes is having somebody that you trust, that you rely on, that you can talk to. And whether if it's just to vent and bitch about these things or to receive advice, either or, having somebody, a friend, a family member, a spouse, or a therapist,
right,
a mental health provider, that's absolutely important to have those types of connections and relationships.
Yeah, I agree. And plus it'll get that moving through your system. I'm gonna always bring it back a little bit woo woo side, but that stuck energy in your system can cause a lot of dis-ease. And so talking, mm-hmm, and expressing, whether that's, and I've called you before and been like, hey, not doing so great, I need to cry, I feel that I trust you in our communications, and I'm going to be comfortable crying in front of you. That's a choice I'm going to make. Can you can you handle that right now? Cool. Yes. All right, let's go. Now, granted, our conversation is a little bit more easygoing than that. I'm not so blunt, but
we're methodical.
We're methodical about it. But that's the gist of what's going on when that engagement occurs. Mm-hmm. But I also feel that, like, some people don't know if they have that trusted source, mm-hmm, to go to, or a trusted confidant to, like, mm-hmm, have those types of discussions. So the therapist also,
we actually all have a trusted source,
Mm.
because source is us, is a part of us. We are a part of source. We always have our spiritual team.
You're never alone.
You are never alone. And it takes practice, also desire, and simply being open to receive, right? And a lot of times that can feel like it's just your own thoughts. It might be your higher self, which is you. So that might be the truth, but that can give you guidance, and that can give you the support, and it can give you the love. It just won't actually show up in physical form as your best friend.
Yeah. And that's very true. I mean, there were times when, I would even go hang out with Webster when I was by myself.
Webster's her dog.
Webster's my dog. I love him. And just hanging out with him brought me that comfort that I needed. I'm not going to lie. I've talked to my dog before. It's all good, even when I'm by myself. We'll have a little conversation. It's okay.
I talk to myself all the time, too.
And I talk to myself all the time. A little pep talk in a mirror is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throw in some I am statements, of course. But, affirmations. I had to throw that out. But yeah, I mean, that's
if you're not sure what an affirmation is, check out the episode Affirm Your Reality.
There you go. We're so new, it's cute. So yeah, that's good. I like that. Self affirmations, that's a good also tip. What other tips would you like?
I mean, be flexible, right? Flexibility is important, not physical flexibility, but flexibility with yourself. Don't be stiff in how you need to work through something. It may take more time or different feelings. Many of us have heard the 7 stages of grieving.
Yeah.
We tend to go through a lot of those, when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, when, we feel low energy and, fatigue. So again, it's okay. It's just doing so with the intention of feeling that feeling in this moment with, again, the secondary intention of moving forward and growing from this opportunity.
Right.
Because sucky situations, they're going to keep happening, but they're actually, I really struggle with saying this.
Swallows.
They're actually a blessing in disguise.
It's so hard to realize that it's so hard to grasp this concept. And it was the one that I struggled with the most when we started down this road. I was like, yeah, so all that bullshit happened to me for a reason. I don't believe it. No, that's all really, really messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started actually connecting all the dots of like what I benefited from each of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh shit, I learned something there, and maybe it was just being taught something that I didn't like, which that's hard to accept. I was literally in a situation that completely sucked, and I found out I didn't like that. Great. Now I know. Okay. Even though society sometimes tells you that, hey, if somebody attacks you, you're not going to like that.
Sometimes you have to learn it for yourself.
Sometimes you have to learn it for yourself. I know. It's highly possible I signed up for that shit. So, in a different realm.
So, backtracking a little bit, when we're wanting to support, I forgot to finish this thought. When we're wanting to support, our friends, our family, when they're going through a situation, and we do our due diligence and ask, what space are you in? Can I give you any advice? Would that be supportive to you? Or do you just want to talk it out right now and just word vomit. If that person says, no, I don't want any advice, that is okay too.
And you have to be okay with that.
Don't take that as a personal attack.
Exactly.
I'm sure your information would be helpful or supportive, but right now that person is not in a state of receiving it. So have you ever heard of this statement, don't cast pearls amongst swine?
Yes. Yes.
So it makes it sound like the swine are bad. All right. Nah. But when we give advice, right, and it's not taken, we're wasting our energy. We are feeling like we are not being received. And so we're taking offense to that. And now we've created this little divide between the original person that needed support and the person trying to give it and isn't being received from them.
Right. You're no longer trying to transmute anything that's happening in that situation. You're creating a transfer of emotional states. And that in itself is just like a spiral that cannot be stopped until you actually do transmute it. So like if you start going at somebody and you start telling them, hey, I was trying to give you advice, you didn't want to hear it, whatever, I'm angry now. Like, how are you actually helping the other person?
And how is that helping
and
you?
How is that helping yourself? Right.
It's okay if they don't want to get out of their yuck.
Yes.
They just want to know that you care enough to listen, to give them space.
They wouldn't have come to you in the first place to have that particular conversation with you if they didn't feel that they could trust you with that emotion to begin with. So it's best to maybe not attack them and break that trust.
Oh, I love that. Trusting their emotion with you.
Yeah.
Emotions can be fragile.
And private.
Yeah. And so when we get an opportunity to be there for somebody in this state, they're being vulnerable. And when we're in that vulnerable state, it's easiest to be broken or
lifted up.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. What's it? Sorry, if you're not watching on YouTube, yeah, flowering, blossoming from the chest. Yeah.
Hand flower suggestion.
So yeah, be okay, be open to listening and loving them in this space. Yeah. It takes courage to be vulnerable. Absolutely.
It does. 100%. Awesome. I think we about covered that today. I'm sure we will have more.
So yeah. And again, when we come on here, this is really exciting for us. And we really love this opportunity, this interaction, being able to be here with our best friend. And like, it's just the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And we just really appreciate you being a part of this with us.
Very, very excited to continue sharing and to continue growing our community. We hope you follow along as much as humanly possible. And if you don't, we understand, and it's okay.
Please like and share. That does help support us and keeps us moving forward. So don't forget to subscribe.
Yeah. And until next time,
love first, love last, love
love
always. Lovely infinite beings, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us in this moment and being open to receiving light and love. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we really look forward to our next connection.
And as a reminder, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay notified of new content from Love Always Self. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Love Always Self, which will be linked in the show notes. We would love to hear from y'all. So if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to discuss,
Please email us at contact@lovealwaysself.com or send us a private message on our social media.
I'm Karista.
And I'm Shira.
And until next time, love always self.
Love Always Self podcast is meant for entertainment purposes only. We do not make any warranties about the completeness, reliability, and accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. Any action you take upon the information on this podcast is strictly done so at your own risk, and we will not be held liable for any losses and damages in connection with the use of our podcast. Any and all medical concerns should be addressed with a licensed healthcare provider, as well as any questions that may be derived from information discussed in this podcast.